I've been broke and I've been rich. So I know what it feels like. And I was
Nicer to be rich.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. And I lived on rough council estates with my mum, and I listened to my mum cry herself to sleep most nights. And I was bullied at school for not having the good stuff. And I always remember obsessing about being rich. And subconsciously, I was like, one day I'm going to be rich. And I had all the cars on my walls. And I used to spend my Saturdays and Sundays over at the newsagents, just spending hours looking at magazines and just obsessing about luxury items. So I've always had this thing inside of me that I wanted to be a multi-millionaire. And my driving force when I was younger was because I wanted to get my mum off the council estate. And my mum was a single parent, and there was me and my brother at the time. And one of my first memories was being in a women's refuge, because we lived in a refuge at one point, and it was freezing cold. And it was hacking it outside with rain. And just in the flicker of my eye, in the corner of my eye, there was this like light in the street just flickering. And we were huddled together with a cold, itchy, brown, smelly blanket. And we were sharing a cold tin of spaghetti bolognese. And in that moment, I was just like, man, I just want something more for life. So that was like my driving force for wanting to become super successful. And I was the kid at school that could get you whatever you wanted. I used to go in with 2 bags, my school bag, which I wasn't interested in, and then the Reebok bag with the jeans and the perfumes. And I used to spend time with my mum's good friend called Tim, who was a market trader. And, you know, he used to teach me the lingo, and I used to go and sell his stuff at school. And that was really quite good fun. So I've always had this thing about I want to be wealthy. And if I have more money, then surely I'm going to be happier. Now, you can have a lot of money and not be happy, but it certainly helps. It certainly helps, okay? And I think that people are broke partly because of society and the system, and what we are told even today in our current schooling system, which I believe is broken in many, many ways. They are teaching staff which is completely irrelevant, and the whole schooling system, in my view, needs a complete change. Maybe we can do that, Diyari.
Yeah? Maybe we can, yeah.
And the old system, the system that is definitely broken for almost everyone, is what's known as the 40-40-40 plan.
And what is that?
So it stands for you are told to work 40 hours a week for 40 years, and you will retire on 40% of your salary and live this amazing retirement and do what you want when you want with who you want.
Government.
Yeah, exactly, right? And for all that might have worked back in the 70s and the 80s, but it definitely doesn't work today. You know, the cost of living is spiraled out of control. The spending power of a pound is the worst it's ever been. You're taxed on tax on tax on tax on tax, and people are in a really bad situation. Now you get the odd case, successful people, 40-40-40, but I'm telling you, for probably over 95% of the population, if you are in that place right now, following a career path, being the manager of the manager, and I'm talking about, you know, real high-level careers that are, you know, high-income earners. In this plan, it's starting to backfire, and they're not tax efficient. So if the 40-40-40 plan is broken, surely people must realize that we need a new plan, and they need to pivot and do something different. So the new plan. This is what's known as 7-7-7. 7 income streams, asset-backed. Within the next 7 years, many can do it in 3, that will generate you 7 figures a year in a tax efficient structure. For me, that is the new plan, and that's what I've been doing for quite a few years now. So how do you go from the old plan to the new plan? Well, you need a plan of attack.
You need a plan to use the plan. So can we go into a little bit more into these 7 assets or 7 way of making money, I know time is limited, obviously, but let's see if we can cover
Great, good. So most people are making money through a job or business. And I'm not saying your job or business is bad. You are a highly successful dentist, known throughout the world, but you're still exchanging time for money. I run the UK's leading property business and wealth training company. I've got a great business. I'm still exchanging time for money. We both have staff. We've got to generate leads. We've got overhead. We are still both working relatively hard in our businesses to look after our clients and serve. So, and I'm not saying a job or business is bad. If you've got a job or business, then you want to not rely on that income to go and feed your lifestyle, okay? Because what happens if you get sick, and this is how people, Diyari, they get into bad debt. They go and get the lovely big house with the big mortgage. They go and get the wonderful cars with the big payments. They want to keep up with the Joneses. But what happens when you do this, the banks have got you. Like the bank want you to have 5, 6, 7 lines of credit. And people use lines of credit for bad debt rather than good debt. Okay, I'm all for leveraging cheap money from the banks and credit cards and loans, but not to feed my lifestyle. So rather than focusing in on just earned income, you need to switch your attention to investment income. And this is really the start of the 7-7-7 plan. Okay, 7 income streams generated via assets where your money works for you, where you can start to make money while you sleep. So what could you do? Have a great job, have a great business, take as much money from those areas and deploy it into assets. So property investing is one of those 7. But within property investing, you've actually got different income streams. So, for example, you could build a portfolio of buy-to-lets. All right, buy-to-let is slightly more challenging today than it was 5 or 6 years ago. It's still a great strategy, and there's still a lot of money to be made. You just need to be smarter. You just need to know how to structure it. So buy-to-let could be one of those 7. Average buy-to-let in the UK might net you £300 to £500 net profit. You do need quite a few of those to make a dent. But number 1, Diyari, you get the capital appreciation. And number 2, you get the passive income. And even if you did 4 houses a year for the next 10 years, we've got 40 properties in the portfolio. You could pass those down to your family tax efficiently. Now, within property, you've got different ones. So you might then do serviced accommodation, for example. That could be a second income stream coming in from property. So you've got property or different property strategies which could make up part of your 7. I wouldn't have all of my investment income coming from property because you want to do diversification. But you can do things like go and buy gold. Go and buy gold, go and buy silver. You might go and invest into certain types of watches that grow over time and could generate profit for you. One of my other favourite things to do as part of the 7-7-7 is to invest into the stock market. And to have maximise ISA allowance for me and my family to invest into asset classes. Now, when I talk about the stock market, I'm not talking about investing into individual companies. Even investing into Apple, could Apple go to 0? But probably won't, but it could, right? Could Lloyd's Bank go to 0? So my strategy in the stock market is not to be a stock picker. I don't want to be an analyst. I don't want to spend hours researching companies and trying to get in low and trying to sell high. What I want to do is invest into asset-backed funds that have got true intrinsic value, that have got 10, 20 years of history, where you then apply different strategies to those funds, where you can start generating 18, 25, 30% a year. So, it doesn't take long actually before you've got your 7 income streams. You've got some in property, you've got some in the stock market, and you might even have some, even hold some gold or silver, or actually just go and buy some gold and silver in an asset-backed fund.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. And obviously we were talking about the difference between a broke and a rich person. Obviously, mindset plays a big role here. They need to sell them to themselves first before the world, that this is what I need to do, and this is the change I need in my life. And would you agree that even a small, if somebody might say, well, I don't have a lot of money to invest, starting small, if somebody has only, I don't know, a few thousands here or there, how would they start? Because we know everything big started small, so what would you say?
Well, I'll give you an example, right? If you learnt a strategy where you just made 18% a year, and you started with £4,000, and you invested consistently for the next 10 years, and you put in an additional £500 a month, your pot would be like a couple of £100,000
from only 4,000,
from just 4,000 in less than 10 years. I think it's about 170 or 190,000 pounds.
Wow.
Just from £4,000. Could you start with £400? Of course you could. Yeah. And the way I like to describe investing, if I gave you a money box today, and that money box represented a strategy, and you knew that for every pound you put in, it would kick you out £3, are you going to go and find more pounds? You naturally will find more pounds, right? And some people, they say, yeah, but I've literally got nothing. Okay, let me give you this example. If your landlord or your mortgage company put your rent or mortgage up by £150 a month tomorrow, are you going to be homeless, or are you going to find the £150? Every single person would find £150. Yeah. So what happens, Diyari, is that people allow themselves excuses. Yeah. This is the broke mindset. I can't, I won't, I don't have much to start. What's the point? Yeah, but my parents, but the government, interest rates. It's going to take too long. I've never done this before. I'm not worth it. And what broke people do, because they get themselves in this vicious cycle, what broke people do is they talk themselves down. Yeah. Successful people like you and I, we talk ourselves up. Yeah. And we have different language patterns which will help you push through this 777 plan. So we say, I can. Yeah. I will. How do we work it out? There is no such thing as lack of time. Yeah. We've all got the same 24 hours.
Exactly. Well, you got this famous saying, you keep repeating, if there's a
where there's a will,
there's a will, there's a way. Yeah. So, and that has become a little bit my motto nowadays. I feel like if I'm stuck on anything, I go back to some old examples of things that I've done, and I feel like, well, actually, that thing seemed so impossible. So how did I do it? It was either by seeking mentors, by seeking knowledge, but first and above all, by believing in myself. So I think we all need a bit of a success story within ourselves, so we can use it again like a ladder to go up, and then the rest, once you do it, becomes a habit. Me and you, we don't think like that anymore. It's always finding the way. So that is great. I mean, I actually know I've got people in my life, in my in my circle who they don't believe in themselves too much, or they feel, and I know they have a great potential. As a friend to them, or as somebody who cares about them, I mean, how can you change people like that?
Well, people need to want to change. And But what we can do is help people and put them in an environment. I believe environment dictates your future. So if you're in a high level environment, a positive environment, you are with people that are doing the right things, not the wrong things, then you've got a really good chance of following suit. So you need to attach yourself to winners. You need to get rid of the losers. You need to start hanging out with a different type of person. You need to believe in yourself, and you've got to want to know you do it. And look, you can literally start the 777 plan right now today. You just need a couple of £100 to get started. Of course, you need to master investing, and I invest massively in training courses and mentorships. I'm constantly around great mentors. I'm always doing advanced training. I'm studying hard, because the strategies that I adopt, I didn't come up with these. I haven't created property investing. I didn't create serviced accommodation. I haven't created index fund investing or selling puts and calls in the stock market for income. These have been created, and the strategy around these have been created by my great mentors. And when we talk about the 777 plan, if all you did as well was invest into the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ top 100 and allowed that to compound over years, based on what's happened in the past, these next 10 or 20 years could be a real game changer for you and your loved ones. But look, we are told to work hard. Yes, I love working hard, but we need to be shown how to work smart and understand the game of money. Money is a value which is transferred between people, and we need to get that money working for us and really take advantage of compounding. And that's what the 777 is designed to do, Diyari, is to help people compound. You have yearly compounding, you have monthly compounding, you have weekly or daily compounding. Some of the strategies which we're doing now, these are monthly compounding strategies, which means it doesn't take you very long to get 7 income streams, 7 figures a year in a tax efficient structure.
No, that's amazing. I mean, people always think successful people were either born successful or they have that genes or the DNA, and they admire them from distance, and some are jealous and some say, good for you, but I wish I could do that. I think we were all born almost equally, I should say, and we all breathe the same air on this planet, and we have the same amount of time in every day, and only we choose how we use it. And I know how you use it. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. I've been watching you in the background, the way you multitask things and you dedicate brain power to certain things more maybe than others, what serves you the most. And these are things, if I was somebody successful and I've been watching you, I think that's a great thing, among other things I've learned, how you dedicate time to important stuff.
So if you are somebody that really wants to create more wealth for you and your future, then why don't you look at becoming a professional property investor where you can take advantage of the UK's #1 asset class and make passive income and also capital appreciation. So I'd invite you now to click the link in the comments or the bio and go and access my latest book called Property Success. This is where I introduce you to the 7 step-by-step system known as the Property Freedom Formula that I have used personally to do over £31 million worth of property development. So go and do that right now. I really hope you enjoy this asset, and it could be the difference that makes the difference and gets you up and running in the next 90 days.